a special edition of the Finish First Cycle Breaker program. You know that I'm a yogi, and I teach not only how to improve your body, mind, and spirit through the practice of yoga, but I also train people on how to become yoga teachers. And with that, we talk about a lot of principles that apply to yoga, meaning on the mat, as well as yoga off the mat. Yoga off the mat obviously would be how you live your life every day. And for me personally, I've been through so much as a defense attorney, as a judge, and just simply as a black man living in this country, that I have to continue to try to elevate myself in everything that I do. Now, I'm not perfect, but I try to elevate myself. And what I mean by that is I take the practice of yoga, philosophy, and empowerment personal, and I take it seriously. So you won't see me teaching a yoga class and then somewhere drunk driving. You won't see me teaching a yoga class talking about how to be your best self and how to live your best life, and then somewhere destroying my body physically or mentally or even spiritually. So the key is I want to be consistent on how I live off the mat, what I teach and preach when I'm talking to you, and what you see me doing in the community. Again, I'm not perfect. I'm just a man, but I continue to strive for a higher level of living. With that being said, I want to talk to you about discipline. And not just any discipline, but self-discipline. And in fact, I'm going to read from a book that I've been reading and that I often study from. The book is called Mind is the Master. And it is a collection of articles and writings that are by James Allen. James Allen is a known positive thinking, empowerment person from many, many years ago. But it's amazing how these principles apply to even what you're doing and what you're going through today. So let's talk about self-discipline. I'm going to read from the book. A man does not live until he begins to discipline himself. Now, of course, that's man or woman, right? But a man or woman does not live until they begin to discipline themselves. Otherwise, you're merely existing. Like an animal, he gratifies his desires and pursues his inclinations just where they may lead him. He is happy as a beast is happy because he is not conscious of what he is depriving himself of, and he suffers as beasts suffer because he does not know the way out of suffering. Now that is a mouthful, but let me break it down. So basically, without self-discipline, without even trying to live a life of self-discipline, we are merely existing. And we are no different than any other animal. But you and I know we're different, right? Because we have this mentality, we have this brain, we have the ability to process things. But what we're hearing here is that we often don't do it. We don't tap into our skills to process. We don't tap into our ability to reason. Instead, we are just moving day by day, drifting like a boat in the sea without a rudder. If the waves go this way, we go that way. If they go this way, we go that way. So the thing is, with a disciplined mind, you begin to gain control of which way you go, and you're not merely existing. And when they talk about suffering because you don't apply the discipline, what that means is when you expose your life to any and every whim, there is suffering attached with it. Now, of course, we know there's suffering in life. No matter what happens, there will be suffering. But what we're speaking of specifically right here is your inability to control where you're going or what you're doing, thereby bringing more suffering into your existence. Let's continue. The person without self-discipline does not intellectually reflect upon life and lives in a series of sensations, longings, and confused memories which are unrelated to any central ideal or purpose. So you just exist without any central ideal or central purpose. You don't reflect upon life. You don't plan for life. You just go about life in an undisciplined way. So what does that look like in real time for you and I? Well, that looks like a person who cannot stop smoking cigarettes even though the doctor is telling them they have cancer or they're on the verge of cancer. Self-discipline looks like a person who refuses to wear a mask just in case coronavirus is real so that you don't get sick. See, that's what self-discipline talks about. It's the ability to reflect and to live a life of purpose so that you're purposefully moving in the right direction. Let me continue to read this book. It's pretty deep. What it says now is a man whose inner life is so ungoverned and chaotic, it must necessarily manifest in confusion, and the visible conditions of his outer life in the world will show through because of what's going on, which is the lack of discipline. And even though the person may have a large share of outer necessities and comfort, they never achieve real success or any real good because there's no real inner peace. So let's pause there. What the author is saying is, how can I have inner peace if I don't have discipline? Though I may look like I'm successful because I got a lot of money, and let me give you an example of that. The neighborhood dope man, right? We've all experienced that in some way. Either we know somebody who's doing it or we've seen the fruits of their labor. So that person seems like life is grand. Everything is going well. They're living their best life. But on the inside, there's turmoil because that person can't sleep at night, or that person is always looking over their shoulder, or they're concerned about being arrested. So when the author is talking about the inner life has chaos and turmoil, it's because of that. And that's why self-discipline is so very important, because again, it can look like you're winning on the outside, but you and I both know when we are not winning on the inside. So you have that brand new Range Rover and that big house, but do you enjoy going home? You have that perfect mate and you guys have the matching Giuseppes and all these things, but do you talk about anything of relevance? Do you have deep conversations, not just about sex and things like that, but I mean about life, what's going on, what's happening now, what the world will look like in a couple of years. So that's what I mean. Everything looks like it's grand on the outside, and that's beautiful, but on the inside, is there peace? And I present to you through this conversation that it's through utilizing your self-discipline that you will gain more and more peace in your inner life. So why is self-discipline so important? Well, if we look at the author, the next sentence or the next paragraph says, with the practice of self-discipline, a man begins to live, for he then commences to rise above the inward confusion and to adjust his conduct in a steadfast center within himself. Self-discipline gives us the ability to find a center within yourself. Now let's go back to the fact that I told you I am a yogi and I'm a yoga teacher. So part of being a yoga teacher or just trying to do yoga, or let's say you don't even want to do yoga, balance is important to life, right? Balance is important to yoga. Balance is important to a yoga teacher, and balance is important to you even if you don't do it, because you need balance in your life. So when I'm teaching yoga and I'm on the mat, I talk about how to gain your balance, how to ground down and get rooted, get firm in where you are right now, feel connected. And then you can begin to balance the things that are important to you, that pose or the situations in your life. And that's what self-discipline does for you. It gives you the ability to balance what's coming and going, because you already have that strong center base. You know where you're going, you know what you want to accomplish, and most importantly, when things try to throw you off base, your self-discipline has given you balance. So again, what does that look like in real life? Well, let's go back to smoking cigarettes. You've already decided that you're not going to smoke. You finally made that decision because the doctor has told you it's not good for you. And then you begin to get that center, that balance, that peace on the inside of you that's saying, look, your life is more important than smoking. So because of that, no matter what comes at you, you're going to be able to endure your goal and your mission. And that's the same energy that it takes to achieve any of your goals. That's the same discipline. But you only get there by first applying self-discipline, where you're telling yourself you are going to throw away the things that seem to be attractive, and you're going to grind and discipline yourself and put in the hard work so that when you are tempted, you're able to stay strong in your center base. Whether it's the ability to get off probation, So you're not going to do anything that's going to cause you to have a probation violation. The ability to stop smoking, whether it's drugs or alcohol or using drugs or, drinking, if that's not good for you, you're going to stop doing it. If it's the ability to love correctly so that you're not in a relationship that is full of domestic violence and chaos, the bottom line is when you decide to do something and put forth the self-discipline to ignore the temptation to go the other way, your life will be more peaceful. All right. The author is telling us that when you're thinking about the process of self-discipline, there are 3 stages. And these stages are control, purification, and relinquishment. Control, purification, and relinquishment. Let's go over those. All right, let's talk about this area of control. A man begins to discipline himself by controlling those passions which have controlled him. He resists temptation and guards himself against all those tendencies to selfish gratifications which are so easy and natural and that have formerly dominated him. So what we're talking about is a concerted effort to control your passions. And, even if you're doing it for a short period of time, it is something to be gained out of the ability to tap into your self-discipline and self-control. Because right now we're talking about control, and oftentimes we feel, I can't control it. I've been smoking weed since I was a kid. I just can't control it. But when you start to exercise the practice of control in other areas of your life where it may be a little easier, that's when you're going to strengthen your control muscle. So it may not be easy at first, but it'll be easy a little later on. So for instance, maybe you don't go cold turkey. Maybe you start in little baby steps, and maybe you don't smoke on the weekends anymore, or maybe you only smoke once a week. I don't know. That's the baby step process. Or maybe you start exercising control in other areas that seem a little easier. That way, when you get to the bigger stuff, you can handle it. So maybe what you'll say is every single day I'm going to get up and say something positive about myself. Every single day. So when you get up and you don't feel like it, when you get up and you're tired, or you get up and you've been, tossing and turning all night, you still stick with it and do it. That is the ability to tap into that control, because that's something that you can control. So when you do that, now all of a sudden it's going to get a little bit easier when we talk about the real control, which is suppressing desires. Man, that is difficult, but it's necessary. So when you have that temptation to smoke weed, that's when you need the control to suppress that desire. When you have temptation to go out and have sex and you're not supposed to, or you've said you weren't going to do it, that's when you need the control to suppress those desires. So right now we're talking about control, and that is very paramount to self-discipline. Next, we have purification. Purification. By this, a man so purifies himself, and remember we're talking about women, as to take passion out of the heart and mind altogether, not merely restraining it when it rises, but preventing it from rising in the first place. Because keep in mind, by merely resisting or restraining the passions, a man can never arrive at peace, but can never really actualize his ideas. But if you take it out the equation altogether, that's a whole nother level. So, we're reading the work of James Allen, and we know that it's an important work. And if you don't know it, look him up and you'll find some very empowering information. Now, this is a step that may be difficult for many of us, you, me, anybody. The area where we try to purify our minds altogether. And I'm going to break it down to where we are, because we live every single day. It may be difficult, but it also may be necessary. When we're talking about stopping domestic violence so that you don't harm your mate or your mate doesn't harm you, we need to eliminate that as an option altogether. See, we talk about these big ideas, but I can break them right on down to where we are. So if we're talking about purifying your mind, how about you purify yourself to the point where domestic violence isn't even an option? So when someone makes you mad, it is no longer an option to go home and hit that person. That's how you avoid domestic violence altogether. That's how you purify your mind from that activity. Or what about on the other end? If you've been arguing with your mate and you know every time you say a certain thing, you're going to get him or her all revved up, and that's when it gets out of control. So let's purify your mind and eliminate that reaction out of your existence. So no longer will you go home and cuss him out because he didn't bring home the money today or he stayed out too late. You're going to eliminate that response. You're going to purify that response out of your life because you know it leads to a destructive outcome. And that's just domestic violence. We can talk about any situation, whether it's something you want to achieve or something you want to avoid. What the author is saying here and what the cycle breaker principle is here is the ability to purify your mind so that it doesn't even exist as an option. And that's hard work. Those are things that I go in some of my advanced teaching, some of my advanced yoga teaching and meditation. Purifying of the mind is difficult, and it is a constant process because you will fail. You'll win in one area and break down in the other. But I'm here to tell you, don't give up because it's a lifelong process. And this is how we develop more and more self-discipline. All right, let's go to the third and final stage the author provides to us in the area of self-discipline. And that is relinquishment. The third stage of self-discipline, that of relinquishment, is the process of letting the lower desires and all impure and unworthy thoughts drop out of the mind, and also refusing to give them any admittance, leaving them to perish. Wow, and that's deep. Now, it sounds deep, but it's true. So basically what it's saying is you are not only now going to purify yourself, but you are going to relinquish, let go of all the impure thoughts, desires, and things that have been holding you back. So let's take it out of this mystical, high-flying, elevated theory and bring it right down home to where you and I live. What if you're in a relationship that has been destroying you mentally or physically? How long are you going to stay in that situation? Or when are you going to relinquish those feelings of love that you have for that person, even though that person doesn't deserve it, or the love that you have for them isn't enough to keep you alive because it's killing you? It's killing your desire, killing your dreams, and maybe even killing you physically because of the nature of that relationship. So it's time to relinquish, let go, destroy those feelings. Another thing is, let me give it easier. I'll give you an easier example. What if you're trying to live a more healthy life and you know that whatever it is that you eat or drink or do is causing you to fall into a series of unhealthy existence? That is another area where you want to consider relinquishing that entire desire or thing out of your life. It could be, I'm giving up red meat because for me, my diet, whatever it is, doctor said it wasn't good for me. So you're going to eliminate it. Maybe it's because of the negativity that goes on in your mind. Maybe you're going to give up negative words, cuss words, arguing, fighting. Whatever it is, when you decide that you want to relinquish or you commit to relinquishing that negativity out of your life, self-discipline will rise to the next level. There we are, another finished first session aimed at giving you tools and techniques that will take you to the next level. These sessions do not have to be long, but they are aimed at being impactful, giving you information that will take you to the next level of your existence. Even if it's just the way you walk down the street, there'll be a higher level of elevation to your walk, to your talk, to your being. And that is the purpose of these sessions. So whether you're here by demand or here voluntarily, I am glad that you've given me this opportunity because my goal is just to leave you some of the wisdom that I've gained all these years from being a lawyer and a judge and just a man existing in this world. So until we meet again, because you know I am the Yogi Judge, I wish you nothing but the best. Continue to be cycle breakers and namaste.